so many people are in debt, and I think the majority of people are in debt because of school.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it's from these crazy liberal arts degrees that they went for. And I think now there's sort of an infrastructure for that, because there's a lot of
Uber.
liberal cities and stuff like that, so
Hmm.
they need somebody who can, I don't know,
Well,
be an underwater basket weaver.
no, you
But they
precisely hit
get
on
into
that
these
thing. And
crazy debts
here's the difference, right? Back
and
in our
stupid
parents'
stuff.
days, there was no federal backing there was no federal student loans. So when people talk about
Right.
what happened to colleges, it's that it wasn't an endless supply of money and manpower. So first off, not an endless supply. And then second off, now education's become a right. And not just
Yeah.
like high school, not even just community college. And some states are able to fund the community colleges for free. California is one of them. Tennessee is one of them because of like lotteries and that sort of thing. I think it's a great, great thing if a state can do. But it's like, no, you need a 4-year university degree no matter what you're doing. And so, and we're naturally, unfortunately, we've become a society of debtors, both physically, monetarily, and I think, of course, I think very much it's bled into our spiritual kind of rigor. So
Yeah.
you tell a little 18-year-old girl who doesn't know what she wants to do, well, whatever you need to do. If you went to the public school system, K through 12, you need to go get a 4-year degree from a university, no matter what it is, because if you don't, you're not going to succeed at life. And so they change their majors 3, 4, 5 times. They go to a liberal arts school. They go to a private Catholic liberal arts school, right? And they rack up 30, 40, $50,000 in debt for a sociology major, for an anthropology major, for a psychology major, for a business major. And they get out into the real
only to
world.
learn
Mhm.
only to learn that they want to be a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Only to learn
that
that.
was really what her vocation was all. Obviously not every woman, but you know, um, you go into a lot of debt just to figure out that, hey, maybe this isn't for me.
Yeah. I mean,
Fulton Sheen actually, I think in one of his talks around the 80s or so. So this must have been going on for a really long time, but in the 80s, I think
mhm.
he was saying that school has become a right and not a privilege, because back in his day, not everybody was going to school.
Yeah.
There was people going into trade and etc.
Mhm.
So um, who knows how long this has been going on?
Well, and
I I don't know.
that's the thing, right? It's like, I mean, you and I both are. I have an associate's. Technically, I have the most worthless degree on paper, right? I have an associate's of general studies. What that doesn't tell you is that didn't tell you that I went to an extremely well priced, rigorous film school, thank God, and that treated film like a trade, which I was very grateful for. And
Good.
I know that what's your story, Rudy? You went to art school for a second, but then you just kind of started just working, right?
Yeah, I entered into art school. It was one of the worst decisions I've ever made. So I'm an art school dropout, and it feels pretty bad, but not really, because while I was going there, I went there for 2 years, and I had a pretty good scholarship.
Hmm.
I was getting about 80% of it paid
In California.
in California for really one of the, at the time, I'm not sure if it's still the same thing, but it was one of the best photography schools in the nation.
Hmm.
And just in general for arts, like I think I went to Art Center. So um, I'm not sure if this is true, but I think it is. They say that 70% of the cars, or all of the cars, what's the statistic? I think 70% of the cars were designed by people who went to Arts Center.
Oh,
So they
interesting.
had a
Okay.
really great automotive program.
Right.
And at the time, maybe like in the 90s, they started waning down a little bit, but before that, it was like one of the greatest commercial photography schools. So I decided to go there. And halfway through, I started thinking, wow, my scholarship was only going to go in for 2 years, and then
Hmm.
I had to front everything else. And I was thinking, wow, I'm going to graduate with almost $70,000 worth of debt. And it's getting pretty hard to find work,
Yeah.
like that's going to pay this off pretty quickly. And I started thinking, I don't know if I want to keep going and accrue all this debt. I was already like I was already kind of scared of
Hmm.
going into debt. And so I said, no, you know what? I'm gonna leave, and I'm gonna try and find an internship and try and make it out that way,
Yeah.
because it's going to be silly if I graduate with all this debt and, have a hard time finding a job and that sort of thing. And sure enough, like a lot of my my colleagues that went to school, they graduated, they went through the whole thing, and they graduated with a massive amount of debt. And I honestly think out of like maybe 20, 30 of the students, maybe like two or three are really successful.
Yep.
So I don't know, man. I don't know. I
Well,
think getting into debt is one of the worst things that you can do, especially like as a trad guy. Like it's gonna set you back, man. It set me back a lot of ways. Like trying to pay things down, and then I
yeah.
don't know.
I think
So
this is I think this is a strain we should really stick on because um again I don't what makes it all the more of a bad thing is that it's normal. Just as we ask like a fellow millennial, like, hey, where'd you go to school? Right. It's the average debt for a 22-year-old graduate is $30,000. It's probably gone up actually. It might be 35 now or something.
I think it's higher. Yeah.
Yeah. And the average salary that you get out making at that age is about 40, I think it is.
Yeah.
So, and when we talk about that, that's school debt. That's easy to point to, but that doesn't talk about the fact that people, you don't get disciplined on things like credit cards. You don't get disciplined on things like car loans,
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff. And I think I'll never forget this. I met a film theorist. I don't what's a film theorist, right? But they went to they went to USC and they spent $100,000 to get a degree that with their emphasis in film theory, which essentially is, I think, a glorified film critic. And then we're
That's
working in
insane.
industry. Yeah, I mean, it hurts me just to think so. But you see these metrics of it's like, well, why are millennials putting off children, housing, all that kind of stuff? And I'm like, well, I mean, there's always like, so a lot of it is, of course, just like personal priorities in life. But yeah, if someone goes to school, or in your case, in the case of a lot of people, they go 2 years through school and they change their major. They
Yeah.
go, wow, I really don't want to, I thought it was going to be cool being a journalist. And it turns out actually like, I kind of really want to be a journalist.
Well, it's even worse when you're going to art school and they go in for one thing and then they're like, oh, yeah, actually, I'm just going to throw away all my progress and I'm going to go into this other art field. I'm like,
mm,
dude, how, like, you're just, these are the, what was I watching the other day? It was like, it was Dave Ramsey, actually.
I knew we were going to get to Dave Ramsey. You better
He was
freaking believe
talking,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
He was talking about buying a house for the first time,
Yeah.
and the person who called asked him, "Hey, I have this much money," and he puts out his whole status, and he says, "And we're actually thinking about going through purchasing the house through my aunt." And she sold one house before, and we're gonna keep it in the family. And he had the best answer. He was like,
Mhm.
why would you set yourself up for failure like that?
Yeah.
Because when you're buying a house, this is a major purchase. You're spending a lot of money. So any
Mhm.
margin of error, like if you're overpaying, or if you're, I don't know, if the house isn't really up to code, or well,
Yeah.
not to code, but if the house isn't
Yeah.
really like adequate and there's a lot of repairs to be done, that that small mistake can actually end up costing you like a lot of money down the road.
Oh yeah.
And it's the same thing with switching your major in art school. Like, why would you do that for something more worthless?